I'm going to start the recording. A few seconds of silence to make sure everything's up on the recording, and then we'll get started. Hello everyone, welcome to the Astrology, Reincarnation and Soul webinar through all of our Uranus and Aries technological challenges. We're up again in a different way. More details on that later. But as you can see from your screen, we're Michael Pinchera. He's going to be speaking upon the Venus-Saturn conjunction in Scorpio. And so welcome, Michael.
Welcome, Marie. Thank you very much for having me.
Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes, I can.
Hold on just a second. I think I have Michael on here. Hello, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marie.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're just a little frazzled here, Leroy and I. We're on this recording. Let me just speak up and say one more thing to all of our attendees. I am actually up and running off of my little Verizon jetpack. So if we have any problems with not ourselves up and running with this, we will reschedule Michael and see what else we have to do to our equipment to keep going. Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you would please introduce yourself and give people some information on your background with evolutionary astrology, please do so.
Surely. Okay, thank you, Marie. Thank you for having me, and welcome to all who are listening. Yes, my name is Michael Pinchera. I've been reading Jeff Green's stuff since his first book, when it first came out. I had it in 81. Studied it on my own for a number of years. And it wasn't until quite a while later, 97, that I took the course with Jeffrey and went through it. And then I completed the course with Kim Marie. And I've been studying astrology as a whole since, I don't know, 77 it was, in the spring. And things have just led me now to where I am here. I've been a Waldorf teacher for 30 years or so, and that's part of what I do also, and an artist, as you might surmise from the background of my picture. So anyway, I am talking about Venus and Saturn in Scorpio in particular, and just so that you know what I'm going to be doing is that, you see, I have Venus and Saturn conjunct in my own chart natally, and so I feel like I'm an example to present this subject, especially seeing that I'm so much in an intimate relationship with the subject. And we'll look at my natal chart and the transits and secondary progressions for my first and second returns, which I'm in the middle of right now. And before this, though, I would like to give a few introductory statements about Venus and Saturn, respectively, and Venus and Saturn in Scorpio. So I will begin. So I was lucky to find this wonderful image of a Venus and Saturnian archetype. And so I have a question for everyone. Is Saturn here covering or uncovering, revealing Venus? And perhaps it may, come automatically to say that Saturn is covering or hiding or preventing Venus from showing herself. That may come very easily to the tongue, but just from my experience, personally, and also as an astrologer with other clients, I would definitely say that relationship contains both aspects of covering and uncovering, revealing. And partly why I say this is because both Venus and Saturn have something to do with differentiation and distinction of experiences that leads to self-definement and self-actualization. They work hand in hand. So I want to talk about incarnation relative to Venus and Saturn right now. And as we know, we talk about the Pluto and its polarity point and what that's about. And I'm going to be bringing in a couple things that out of my research and studies that relate to this. And then, so, we talk about reincarnation. So there's also a time between death and rebirth, right? And we go through these different spiritual spheres in which we go through the experiences that we need to overcome, from what we have set up for ourselves that don't work or don't are really in alignment for future evolution. And of course, we take in new experiences in our time in the spiritual world. But at some point, we make this decision of whether we're going to come back or not. And this is this cosmic midnight point. And this is what I feel that Pluto is about. Because Pluto and its polarity point, Pluto really shows the things, our gifts and our challenges, right? Everything that's in us that is really pushing us forward, and also that which is really compulsions because of the things that are in us that are really coming from past lives, and the the destiny call from the future. Okay, and these are indicated by the south and north nodes, the gateway of incarnation, that our human spiritual individuality incarnates into our human existence. Okay, and this is from partly from my Waldorf background, studying anthroposophy. We very symbolically talk about the human being being made up of head, heart, and hands. And so on a soul level, we are talking about the basic soul aspects of ourselves, our thinking, our feeling, and our willing. Okay. And then on a physical level, this is our vehicles for this: the nervous system, the respiratory circulatory system, and the metabolic limb system. So this is something very basic. And then on a soul level, we're getting where Venus is really operating, is that anywhere from a very primary, ancient experiences that we have. It's the most basic. We have sympathy and antipathy, that which we are uniting with our experiences, the things that we come to, and the things that we are antipathetic or repulsed by. But it's necessary, both are necessary for developing our sense of place in the world. And antipathy is very important so that we remain separate as individuals, so that we can take part in guiding our own evolution. So Venus operates, and what happens in between here? And we have certain experiences, we take them in, and we either really jive with them, if you will, or really like them, and the things that we repulse, or we just have to stand back a bit to make sense of it. And Venus takes us and really makes a distinction in the articulation of what the experience is, and devises, really senses us really on a feeling level of what is good for oneself. And this happens internally within our thinking, feeling, and willing life, and of course in our experiences with the outer world. And so this what happens here then is the sense of self and sense of other is what Venus is about. And all of this, of course, the inner values and virtues, which I'll talk a little bit about later, all are relative, of course, to the evolutionary state and the karmic necessity, karmic need that we have in this life. Venus, we have a relationship with ourselves, our essential needs. We project these upon others, and Venus shows how we attract the types of relationships and people that we do. And so here I'm showing some of the basic things about Venus. Okay, this awareness and our way we feel about ourselves and the other. Okay, and we develop a sense of value about each one of these aspects of our lives. And so it's about relationship with ourselves, relationship with the other, whatever that may be. And I've mentioned the sympathy and antipathy aspect of our basic soul nature, and we're either attracting or repelling things. But so what Venus is doing is really taking our experiences and really trying to find a balance. Okay, where am I in relation to this? Okay, and this is where the balance is, and really Venus is always looking for that. We need that so that we can really find our place in the world. And on a soul level, and also on a physical level, these things play out. Now, in assimilation, okay, we assimilate experiences, and we also eliminate experiences. This is what Venus is about, and really getting down to what's really of value to ourselves. And but then when we take our experiences after we assimilate them and eliminate others, and then we come to a place where we can create. And this is the basic reason why Venus is really related to the arts, let's say. And on a physical level, I want to talk about the ears and eyes. Okay, the ears take in things from the outer world. Okay, and eyes, we actually reach out with our eyes at the etheric level and take in experiences. And the kidneys is an elimination. Okay, and in the realm of creation, of course, we have reproductive organs, and which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And so all of this, and also all of this that goes on here, Saturn interacts with all this by developing, or how shall I say, it takes the experiences and creates the sense of I, makes definitions of who I am. And so there's a continual cycle of defining oneself, and well, I should say it's an ongoing process. And of course, it depends on what is the determinant factor of who I think I am, or what I think I am. That is it something that is truly of the most intrinsic spiritual nature, or is it something that's based on something other than myself? And that's not always an easy thing to determine in any given time. Let's see here. Okay, in relation to the body here, I show these little diagrams. You'll have to excuse my artwork here. The eyes, the ears. I show the larynx here in relation to the ears, kidneys, and I use the female reproductive system because it's the most it's the best example. I mean, we can talk about the male reproductive organs too, but this is a better gives a better example of what I'm going to say. And so we take in things. I mean, we reach out and we gain experiences through seeing and hearing to the outer world. We listen to the outer world, and it is not the ear itself or the inner ear that is related to Venus. It's the psychology, it's the spiritual aspect, activity that goes on in our hearing. There's all this scientific understanding that hearing is made up of vibrations, and it goes through these different hammer and the drum and all these things in here. And actually what happens is that the sound travels from something very physical, vibrations and the hammer and anvil, and then the hairs in here get increasingly smaller until they are actually one molecule in width. And so actually the vibrations get down, if you can, if you take this, is that it becomes almost like a homeopathic experience of what was taken in from the world. And then what we hear is more of an inward thing of what actual tone is. Okay, then we take out for the world and can speak out here. With the kidneys, okay, they're listening also, but it's much more inward. Okay, it's listening to the blood. It's listening to it in a very mysterious way, but it listens to the blood, and it, in a very Venusian manner, it leaves what is good and necessary and eliminates what is not necessary. Then the reproductive system is another kind of hearing. It's very inward, and you see even in the morphology of all these organs, there's something similar. But in here, it's so inward that it's so inward it becomes cosmic, in the sense that, for instance, the human egg cell is actually, you can say, a recapitulation of the beginning of our evolution, of our cosmic evolution. The egg is pure potentiality, and this is a different kind of hearing. Okay, so I want to talk about Venus and Scorpio for a little bit. So with Venus and Scorpio, we have a very intense and ongoing self-examination and self-analysis, always looking at what is of value. That's always a big question for Venus. Focused on motivations, our intentions, our desires, and fears. Venus and Scorpio is very psychologically oriented within oneself and towards others. Okay, this leads to the ability to evaluate. Okay, anybody that comes into the room, Venus and Scorpio can just kind of have a sense of who and what that person is about, or a situation. Okay, and this ability to focus on an experience of an experience or a situation, and understand the reason why behind whatever is happening. This leads to others being magnetized to the Venus and Scorpio person. There's just the intensity of that kind of evaluating, really, it's like really the soul reaching out, and the others can feel that. So that's the magnetization. It's not, literal magnetization. So, and Venus and Scorpio there's a possibility to not only see these things and understand what's going on, but also to understand why others are being magnetized to them. Oftentimes, not always, other people can respond with insecurity, okay, because if they're not used to people being so intently getting inside of them, that a Venus and Scorpio person can do. And so this gives rise, because it gives rise to sort of like a very unconsciously self-questioning of themselves. So Venus and Scorpio, another aspect of this, it shows that, basically, first of all, that all the things I've been talking about in Venus is up for transformation. And part of it is past lives of betrayal and loss, and leading to the impulses for self-preservation and survival. So that's could be part of the reason why a Venus and Scorpio person would be so tuned in to situations and to other people around them. And Venus in Scorpio can be very defensive, okay, even distant. It all depends on their particular karmic situation. the evolutionary intent of Venus and Scorpio is to remove all sources of external dependence. Because the Scorpionic tendency is to identify, in fact, overly identify with and give power, too much power and meaning to other people, to things, perhaps, externally or internally even, to feel secure. And this is something very basic that's in our evolution at this time, generally speaking. So the Scorpionic need, for intense, deep, emotional communication with another, which is experienced like a deep and meaningful sexual experience, or a strong emotional confrontation that gives consciousness to figuring out why a situation is happening to them, or how it is initiating transformation for themselves. So there's a need for Venus to embrace the Taurus polarity, to recognize and to learn how to heal one's wounds from within. And this can lead to self-empowering, self-sustaining, self-reliance, and it creates deep and genuine security. So Venus and Scorpio really is learning how to directly express one's emotional reality. And Scorpio's greatest need and desire is to have someone to fully understand them. And as this lesson is learned, the experience gives rise to learning how to better discriminate who should or should not be in one's life. I'm going to move on to Saturn here. And Saturn, as you know, deals with the principles of limitation, restriction, and discipline. And I'm showing here on the slide, the positive, negative aspects of this. Okay, and so on one side we have our karmic necessity, our karmic needs. Okay, the other side is really where we've really individualized and spiritualized these aspects, and it is there where we have pure intention, where we can live in freedom. So the karmic necessity of needs is negative when, to whatever degree, it can be very subtle or very obvious that what we feel is important for our identity is determined by others or even situations that we live in. Okay, and compared to that we create ourselves. We realize, out of realizing who we are, that we make our decisions according to that rather than to the outer world. Even though we may have something, that I explained earlier with the incarnation chart, to whatever degree, or not whatever degree, but to whatever ways that we define ourselves, okay, we can get into a point of maybe, possibly, rigidly holding on to that particular reality. And if we do that, we end up in some way putting controls on ourselves and on others in the world around us. Okay, the positive side of Saturn in that realm of where our identities are created out of freedom is really we have the experiences of, we make discernments rather than negative judgments. We create discipline for ourselves, and we're steadfast in what we do. And this is the positive form that Saturn gives our lives. And so, to the degree that Venus is operating in ways that are determined by, outer things rather than one's own values, then Saturn comes in like the very controlling, the Lord of Karma, and as the heavy lead weight, okay, to make Venus really find its rightful way. And but when Venus is operating positively, then Saturn then becomes something that is just giving form to what Venus has sensing as beautiful. And I'm just going to go back a little bit to this picture. Here, Venus is showing a light. She's looking at this light, this ideal. And it's this that Venus is always looking at, and how we experience through Venus. And it's Saturn who, in the positive sense, then can give form, and one becomes steadfast in one's identity, true individual identity, and especially if we start moving into the spiritualized state, then it becomes something that is more transpersonal. Saturn, when it's not fixated or focused on a particular identification that we've created for ourselves, then we are focused on a higher self, a sense of purpose that is based on something more than just survival. Okay? Saturn can be very stubborn and be resistant to things, partly out of just wanting to control one's sense of self and not wanting, fear of being ruled by somebody else, or positive resistance in the sense that one really stands back, okay, to really ascertain, to discern what is, if something is really going to be part of myself or not. So in this way, it really works hand in hand, once again, with Venus. Saturn negatively can set inflexible limits and structures. And of course, that's whenever any of these fixtures, sense of identities are determined from things outside of ourselves. And also, we may determine something that's really rightful of ourselves, when we're younger. If I carried my identity as a 17-year-old into a much later age, then it becomes something negative. It's something out of place, okay? And then it becomes something limiting to our own growth. And in a positive sense, that limits and structures, sort of like boundaries, healthful boundaries, that's really holding a containment, a chalice, if you will, but a containment for identity. So Saturn is always looking for what is most essential of something. And I want to refer to one thing too, that Saturn really holds, many of you may have heard that Saturn holds cosmic memory. And it does hold the memory of all of evolution, especially our evolution. It has like the intention of what a human being is and can be. So in this sense, Saturn is looking for what is most essential. And so whenever we don't find, or we start living in a way that is not most essential for our positive future growth, then this is when Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto really come in and do their thing. So on a physical level, the bones, okay, are in us. They give us a support. And in this way, it's a picture, if you will, of what Saturn is for ourselves. It is a support. It is the basic structure that is behind our eyes. Compared to an exoskeleton. And everything developed over here is more like an exoskeleton, a shell, that seems like of what we are developing as an eye, but it's not. And so it's like as if our muscles and internal organs were attached to a shell rather than our own skeleton. So moving on to Saturn and Scorpio. It's anything in Scorpio, of course, really has to do with the urge to merge, become one with others, or something else other than ourselves, and to participate in a greater whole. And we do this in order to become something greater than what we are already. It's the creative dynamic aspect of sex and its archetypal expression, and it has to do with the identification something greater than ourselves. So Saturn in Scorpio, it's about how one actualizes one's own authority in life needs transformation in that particular life. And so there are lessons about internal and external authority and power. There's a transformation of whatever boundaries that are set and rigid in our lives, identifications and fears. And of course, this can be manifested in people around us as mirrors. So this is a deeply introspective position for Saturn to be in. And this leads to awareness of one's own abilities and capacities, knowledge of the nature of the social functioning that can be a channel for meaningful activity, for one's personal integrity, personal authority, and one's own capacities. Both Saturn and Venus have their virtues, which I'll talk about later. Now, when they're conjunctions, as you know, have to do with, it's a new cycle beginning, okay, or purpose that is beginning, and in a very instinctual way. An unchecked expression or action, okay? It's something very almost primeval, if you will. Different experiences, unconscious experiences, random, we might even experience them, are initiated in order to begin a process of self-discovery for a new evolutionary purpose. That has to do with a waxing conjunction. Now, a waning conjunction, the evolutionary cycle has been completed. Okay? And the individual will never again experience that planetary function or those planetary functions in the same way that were previously experienced, unless one is, well, I'll say that's even true even for one who is highly resistant to change, because it will just come back more intensely. Saturn and Venus in Scorpio. So right now, I'm going to mainly be focusing on a waning square right now, or waning conjunction, excuse me. And so it's the ending of a cycle of previously set elements that determines what self-esteem and values are determined by, and they're showing themselves to those Venusian aspects of self-esteem and values are showing themselves to Saturn, okay, and coming for a new determination of what is of true value, okay, and threshing away what is not of value, and reaping of what is of value, what have been the Venusian patterns of self-esteem, Venusian values, etc. So Venus is now I'm going to talk about waxing, waning. Venus is moving towards Saturn. The lessons around self, value, and relating, what is the truest essence will be kept, and that which is not will be challenged in order to learn lessons, to learn objectivity. That's a big one for this particular conjunction. Self-discipline, relating to being true to oneself, being true to one's values, personally and in relationship. Another side of this are the lessons in accepting oneself and being at ease with oneself, being at ease with others, not being too hard on oneself, living how one lives, living situations and relationships are sort of like the karmic sets and the players, okay, that provide the fulfillment of the particular karma that one individual needs to fulfill. And they're the triggers for Venus's fulfillment and evolutionary intent. Okay. Here's Venus in Scorpio. I just found this great picture of Venus in Scorpio sort of shedding her skin. Thought I'd throw that in there. Now I'm going to move on to chart, natal chart. As you see, I have natal Venus and Saturn conjunct in Scorpio, very early Scorpio. Now, as you can see, I have Scorpio in the 7th house, okay, ruled by Venus. I have the South Node in the 7th house, and it's very much connected with this. So here, Venus is waning conjunction to Saturn. So Venus has gone past Neptune and heading towards Saturn here. Now, also keep in mind that Neptune is square the nodes. So it is a skip step. And skip step is used awful lot. I would also say skip step, or it is unfinished, very unfinished business. So it is waning. And so Venus has had its experiences, okay, in previous lives, and is now here for transformation. And it's moving towards Saturn for a new definement of what this is, of what is really is going to be really true to one's spiritual identity. Now, I was born in I would say, a first stage individuated family. My parents were both 19 years old when they had me. They had high school education. My father was a second generation Italian. My mother was from the South. She converted to Catholicism to appease my father's mother. I had 3 younger brothers by the time I was 9. So my parents were probably pretty crazy by the time I was 9, with 4 boys. I went to Catholic school, grades 1 through 4 and 6. I ended up throwing my catechism book in the sewer at age 13, never went back. Now, interestingly, my father's sun sits right on top of my conjunction of Venus and Saturn. And so he was a very important player in my development in a very Saturnian sense. He, from age 9, when I was age 9 on, my father started drinking. He was violent. He was frustrated because of lack of finances. So I caught some of the brunt of that, but because I was older, I was a good kid and all that, I missed some of it. My brothers got the worst of it. But anyway, as far as Venus and Scorpio with my father, during adolescence is when Venus truly is birthed in one's human life. My own intellectual, my nonconformist interests, my artistic interests were threatening to my father. Okay, and he himself was a frustrated artist, gave it up because of its so-called impracticality, and but because I did not follow his particular view of how a son should follow in the footsteps of the father and go into business with him and all that, and a lot of other things. I was a competition for him in a certain sense, but he did not know how to relate. But he did not accept me either. And so he was, in this way, he very much exemplified how Saturn can really hold Venus back. I would say that, no was his favorite word for things that I wanted. And let's see what else. Oh yeah. Plus, there's this whole cultural thing as being firstborn in an Italian family had a certain distinction, and that kind of like helped me, kind of gave me a buffer with my father. Um, um, I'm not saying the buffer itself, the cause for the buffer is not such a great thing, but I'm grateful for it. That's part of my background here. Other aspects as far as relationships. So I was also, I kept a lot to myself. I did not share much with my father. And also because of his judgments and his judgments on me, I would retreat inwardly. Okay, and that was my survival thing. So there's Venus being definitely covered outwardly by parent, and it became internalized. Okay, so I carried that throughout much of my life, which we'll get into a little bit more later. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and get into another aspect of Venus in Saturn. So when I was 15, okay, my girlfriend at that time experiences her sexuality fully with supposedly a good friend of mine, and so there's that sense of betrayal and on both by both parties. So I had that very strong experience, and kind of became a signpost for that time. So actually, since that time, I was sort of like all throughout until a certain experience, which I'll talk about later. Serial monogamy was my modus operandi. So in 1971, 17 years old, had my first experience of intercourse. 18, girlfriend, we had an abortion. She had an abortion. And then 19, following in my parents' footsteps, so to speak, out of guilt, feelings of duty. Here, Venus and Saturn really holding Venus back. I had all my reasons why not to, all my feelings of not wanting to, but I end up marrying out of guilt, and which lasted for 2 years. Kind of a Saturn transit pretty much, and so I got out of that, but it was still something I had to work with. During this same time, by the time I'm 19, so I married, lasted for 2 years. I was in art school. I worked at a commercial art studio. 21, I'm divorced. As I said, then serial monogamy. What I consider my first adult relationship with Alice, and which lasted about a Saturn transit. Met at an art gallery, Venusian kind of place where we worked. I've been involved with the anarchist group. I left the group there after a few years. I'm still in the social circle. And that relationship ended because, well, it's part of the times, we were going to experiment with an open relationship and which became a focus on sexuality and freedom. And so I moved out and then had, a few different relationships, non-lasting. Even a neighbor. Had my first teaching experience at an alternative school in downtown Detroit. And that went on like that for a few years. Then in 1977, I got married again. And this Venus thing is what's really needing the lessons of a certain kind of self-discipline, and has an experience of not really an example, I should say, of not really having that fully developed. I meet Kathy. She's married. I end up moving in with her and her husband, but Kathy and I are together, and that provided for some high drama, as you can imagine. It was during this time, 77, this is when I started studying astrology, spirituality, devouring books, met anthroposophy, and all that. So here is moving on to 1983. And I'm still married to Kathy. As here's my natal conjunction here. Here is 1983 conjunction, still in the 9th house, just past my natal position. Pluto right over that position. And this is starting a 12-year period, a Pluto transit of very strong lessons in relationship. Okay, and just go back a little bit to 1978. I met Siddha Yoga, so this is part of this whole thing. Also, this Neptune here. Had Shaktipat experiences with Swami Muktananda, if you know him. Even considered becoming a sannyasin. And I went from the attitude of, I don't need no stinking guru, to I have the best of the East and the best of the West, with Siddha Yoga and anthroposophy. And later on, I ended up going to study Waldorf, but I'll go to that later. But anyway, in 1982, my daughter, Lila, is born, and I was studying anthroposophy and Waldorf education. At this time, I took a year off from school because my daughter was around. And let's see, I worked more intensively, just to make money, that sort of thing. So working hard to make money. So in 1983, the exact Venus-Saturn conjunction, transiting Pluto over natal Venus-Saturn conjunction. So January 18th of this year, in 85, which happens when Pluto's moved over a bit, this is when I had made the decision that anthroposophy, spiritual science, as my spiritual path, after a very tremendous soul struggle of what spiritual path I really wanted for myself between that and Siddha Yoga. Anyway, January 18th, 9 p.m., no time, I made that decision. So December of that year, so this is part of the Venus, Pluto moving over this, and part of the start of this 12-year period of learning these lessons of Venus and Scorpio as being exposed and challenged by Pluto. So in 1985, Kathy, my wife, started exhibiting personality disorder, and she moves in with her parents. And spring, summer, somewhere in there, I filed for divorce, put the house in her name. Lila and I move out, and so living in my aunt's house. I am going to school full time, working full time, and I have a 3-year-old daughter. And so that's very, very Saturnian time, and also very Plutonian time. The intensity was incredible. So then come 86, well, I'm also, during this time, I'm like commuting 120 miles a day. So it was just quite incredible. And so during this period, the child care provider for Lila, Charlotte, I ended up getting in a relationship with her. Another time where I'm in a relationship with a married woman. And so I ended up getting a teaching position. I took the year off from Waldorf when my daughter was born, then I went back, and that's what I was going to school for. Graduated, and then I get a position to teach at a Waldorf school in Austin, Texas. And Charlotte moves to Austin, Texas before me, and then Lila and I follow. And so by the time 1990 comes about, I jumped a little bit. So we were there for a few months later. I suggested that Charlotte go back to her husband. And then in 1990, Pluto enters my 10th house. And so, the whole Venus, Saturn in Scorpio is highly charged with Pluto in Scorpio. And now moved into 10th house. I'm now teaching full time. And I meet Miss Mary Maxine Brown, rhythmist. I got a secret wish of my own fulfilled by that. I met someone who has the exact same birthday as myself. Just a few hours later, she was born in Chicago. Very rocky relationship. Did last a Saturn return. Then I have a relationship with my daughter's kindergarten teacher that's going through divorce. And anyway, so that goes on for a while. Then in 1993, I meet this other woman from California, and Lila and I moved to California. And let's see, so 1993, I'm teaching in Davis, California. Betsy and I split, get back together. We discover she's pregnant. We get married. The relationship's rocky and then starts getting mysteriously weird. So Pluto is really trying to get my attention, and I've not learned my lesson yet. So so then the birth comes in 1994, the birth of this child, and she prevents me from attending the birth. She changes the first name of the child. We move in separate houses. We do counseling. She files for divorce. Makes it difficult to see the child. Starts child support. I'm briefly homeless for 2 weeks. I'm still teaching. And then I'm asked not to return that year because it's just this relationship's created turmoil in my life. And so teaching. So I end up for a year and a half, I'm in California selling cars of all things. And so by late 95, Pluto enters Sagittarius and things start letting up on me. And at this time, I felt like my life had hit bottom, okay? And I'm starting to really, I got what the lesson for my Venus-Saturn lesson was, and what all the insecurity thing, reasons I was getting into not multiple relationships, but serial monogamy, and not being clear with certain boundaries and getting involved with married women, etc. I finally get it after Pluto. The Pluto train runs me over a couple times. Okay, so I applied for a master's psychology program. I'm accepted starting the fall of '96. And that summer, I go back to Michigan to work with my brother and living with an old friend. I'm offered a teaching position in Idaho here, where I live now. And I visit in May, I accept, and move in August. Lila, at this time, during the divorce, she's living back with her mom. Lila and I take a road trip from Michigan to Idaho via Texas, and camping out all the way. And so anyway, I'm there for a while. I'm not wanting to get involved in any relationship. So I'm not for a while. I meet Andrea. I'm attracted, but probably for the first time in my life, I resist getting involved in a relationship. This is about really the kind of objectivity and self-discipline that Saturn is really calling for my Venus. And so, but, ended up being that, well, I did not pursue the relationship. It ended up being that later on that Andrea was attracted to me also and was going through the same kind of thing. And in the following year, we actually ended up marrying. We're still married. And so that same year, that's when I enrolled in Jeff's Pluto school. And at that time, some interesting things happening that something I had suspected. And that is, I had a scheduled visit with a child in California, and flew there from Idaho and drove and everything to get there, and they weren't home. And Betsy ends up the following year getting remarried. The new father adopts a child. Then I find out from a few of her friends that the child's father is actually someone else from California. So it's a whole other thing that she was this Pluto person, if you will, that came into my life to help move the needed lesson here to move forward quickly, not painlessly, but very quickly. So at this time, I'm teaching, and I'm a mentor to other teachers. I'm an artist painting, and things start opening up more. Taught a lot of different classes, showing my artwork in New York and other places around the country. Let's see. I think that I'll move on to the next slide. Here, we have the natal chart, the transit chart for 83, and also the directed solar arc progression chart. So here it's kind of interesting too for the progressions that Mars is conjunct, this Venus-Saturn thing. So the Mars element, something that really, the solar element really moving forward, but also something that is providing a certain kind of difficulty. Here, I'm going to jump ahead here to the present. And excuse me just for a second. So here we have the chart for today. So interesting, I'm doing this presentation on Venus and Saturn and Scorpio conjunct. And of course, as you know, it is that now with the North Node. And it was just a half hour or so before this presentation that the exact conjunction happened. So it's just a few degrees away from my natal conjunction. And so Pluto now is in my 12th house as far as it's transiting. So what has started here, in a certain sense, you can say, and it's gone through here, and now ends up here. And so a certain cycle has ended, and also the fact that Venus is now waxing from Saturn. It's starting this new cycle, and I definitely feel like that there is sort of a new life happening. I mean, I've been feeling this for a little while. It's been happening for a while, and so the experiences that I went through prior to this time, it's not to happen again. But I'm starting something new, a new set of values, a new sense of self, and the north, I should say, is now in this area here. So this whole, whenever the nodes are transiting, wherever they are, especially at the time of their returns in our charts, it is a recharge, if you will, of our spiritual intentions that we're bringing into life, okay, especially the North Node. And here are the same two charts with the progressions for today. And so we have, it's interesting here, we have North Node. Now we have Pluto right here. Okay, so this whole sense of new birth has happening. I mean, it's a waning in this particular cycle between 7th and 10th house. Okay, and something something has been reborn here. The progressed Venus-Saturn conjunction is now in the 12th house, conjuncted the transiting Pluto. And so it's just like another indication of how these lessons have been learned. And here, I mean, it's, of course, it's the natal progression, the same positions are here, but the lessons have been learned, they're ending the cycle. Not that I'm not needing any more lessons, but it's certainly coming to a head here. Now here I have, just the transit charts, natal, 83 and 2013. And just looking at the lineup here between how Venus is waning here in this time of my life, and has since then changed. It's now going on to create a new cycle, as I've said before, setting up a whole new sense of values. And this manifests in many different ways, not only internally, but also outwardly. A lot of my lessons since this very hard period, it's a 12-year period here throughout the 90s, 80s and 90s. Also with material goods, finances and all that, I was really struggling hard. Lack of money most of the time. And since then, things have changed a lot. I've not been in need. And I was telling Kim earlier, for the past 5 years or so, my wife and I have been making plans to move out of the country. And we've been traveling and checking out different places. And we, for the past 2.5 years, so for the past Saturn transit, we've had our house up for sale. And just today, a couple hours ago, we had an offer on the house. So it's like perfect timing, you know. So I guess what that really comes to is that how what manifests in the outer world in our lives around us is really a mirror of truly our soul nature. And so we may do all the affirmations. I mean, affirmations are good, they do things, but if we are not doing the internal changes, then the affirmations are very limited in their efficacy. So here's this picture again of Saturn and Venus. So yes, Venus, it gets covered by Saturn, can be, and that's only in the need for Venus to be able to find its more rightful expression. And Saturn will uncover Venus and support Venus and even give form and a containment, a vessel for Venus to shine out into the world. And here is some information from me. If you feel like you'd like to be in touch with me, or have questions, or would like to have some astrological work done. Kim, are there any questions?
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. I've been in and out.
Oh, really? This is the first time I've heard you. Yeah.
Well, I've had myself muted, but I've been pretty much on the call for maybe the last 15, 20 minutes. After I started the call, I lost my connections, and I won't tell you the details of what I've done to get back connected.
Okay.
So, Michael, I did have one person who wanted to say, could you summarize what you think your core lessons are as a soul.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your core lessons are for your soul with these evolving Saturn-Venus lessons? So
Yes.
if you want to give a recap on that, and then if anybody else has questions, you can type. I think that I have the ability to also mute and unmute people.
Okay.
Michael, what did you learn from what you shared?
Yeah, well, on different levels. One is having to do with feeling comfortable with myself, okay, and overcoming a lot of the lack of self-esteem that, one could say started with my relationship with my father. I mean, he was just a player in an evolutionary lesson that I needed. That what I feel, who I am, what I do is of worth, and I don't need to be shy to share that. And and I still work with that, but nowhere near like I had to years ago. So that's on one level of it. And the other one is, as I mentioned before, just having the Saturnian discipline, if you will, of the way that I connect with people, okay, especially in intimate relationships. With, as you can see here, with the South Node in Cancer, okay, past lives, a tendency would have been to be very subjective and very emotional in the way that I relate with others. Okay, I mean it'd be like a negative aspect of it, something that really needed lessons, and so out of my need, okay, and especially with the aspect of not having a strong self-esteem, okay, and certain feelings of insecurity, then I latched on, okay, Scorpio. Gave too much meaning to others, and I had the serial monogamy, and not spending enough time to myself, that sort of thing. So that was a major. That's like the biggest piece right there, and 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 the other side of that, the North Node, first house, Capricorn, indicates the same thing. A little bit more focused. We find out what. Putting myself a little bit more forward, in importance, not overly so, but to balance out the giving myself too much in relationship, okay, being disciplined about it, being objective about it, objective about my relationships. And so that's what that's about too. And I'd say that's probably my biggest lesson in this life. Now this is all connected here too, and the skip step business or unfinished business that when I really, when I was 24, I started getting into spirituality, and especially my involvement with Muktananda really started a daily meditative practice, which I practice to this day. I mean, not the Siddha Yoga, but I learned the importance of that. And then what I've taken on now as my particular spiritual practice, I carry it, and it goes into my work as an astrologer, and also as a teacher, and in all my relationships. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, I'll give you some feedback. Just looking at your chart, and again, apologies if I'm missing things you've been saying, but. Hearing those words of all the relationships, that whole seventh house Pluto Libra soul has this lesson of discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I can see where you have had to repeat Venus, Balsamic Saturn, many of the intimate relationships to move you along in learning the discrimination lesson.
Yes.
Neptune and Libra square those nodes, those planets up there in the ninth house. Who am I? Who am I not? And the projections onto the other, the being projected upon, the searching for the one who will love you. I look at that South Node Uranus and I go, what was, I may have missed you speaking about relationship with mother. What was there nurturing in your early environment?
My mother was very nurturing. It was my father who was not nurturing. I mean, for the vast majority of the time. This Uranus there really has just showing that the trauma in relationship, not only in past lives, but carrying it forth into this life. Also bringing in, certain aspects. I had very nonconformists. Not that I was doing things like very wildly, but I had a certain amount of nonconformity in me, enough to do things like getting involved with a married woman, But also this is bringing in. I don't know if you caught this earlier on in my early 20s, part of an anarchist group. So in my activities socially, but it also has to do with as the positive aspects of who I develop myself as, or how I determine myself, and how positively my Venus is operating. My Uranus then can operate positively in being creative and bringing in change in a positive way in social situations in the world, and not only in just the particular relationship I'm in.
And I would say transforming the trauma, the emotional traumas around family of origin issues, those you were born into, those you created. I heard about a daughter, and was there supposedly a second daughter that you found out was not yours?
Yeah, a second child. Yeah, actually a son. Yeah, who was not was not mine after all.
A second child. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then, really being able to, transcend all that energy into authentic nurturing. Do you work with children?
I do. Yeah, I've been a teacher for 30 years. I've been with children. I've been mainly with elementary age children, though I have taught some high school and teach adults also. My daughter, who's 30, she's actually coming to visit this Monday. Good to see her.
So was the daughter born? Does the daughter have Saturn in Scorpio? She would, because you had her in the early, if she's 30, yeah.
And her son is right on my Venus.
For sake of our listeners, just for comparison, I have an 8th house Pluto. I'm early Pluto Virgo. And many people might know I have Sun, Mercury, Neptune, 1 to 2 degrees Scorpio, midheaven at 14. I have Venus new phase Saturn, but my Venus-Saturn conjunction is in Sagittarius in the 11th house. So I've had very many of those similar Scorpionic attractions, lovers. In the early 80s, when Pluto went into Scorpio and went over my stellium, my ex left me for my best friend. I lost 2 people out of the blue. Within that year time frame, within that first year after my divorce, I ended up with I ended up in sexual relationships in a period of a year and a half with 4 different men. 3 of them were married. And I didn't know about astrology. I was just learning astrology. I was just discovering reincarnation. This is Pluto in my 9th house, like you. But this was going over my Sun, Mercury, Neptune, stellium. But asking that question, what does this all mean? Why does this happen? It was also the time period I had my first astrological reading with Jeffrey Green. And he was the one who kind of really helped me wake up in a Scorpionic way to what all this meant. And again, I was 26 years old and I'd never heard of the word reincarnation before, believe it or not. I was just opening up to it. And so I ended up in the space of a few months basically telling all four of these men goodbye. Well, one actually got killed in a plane crash. The other three, I said goodbye, although I would interact with them once in a while. You know, they'd always want to come and reestablish sexual relations, and it was a discipline for me, 8th house Pluto, to say no. And and so I see similar stories with the Venus Saturn. Again, mine was a little bit. It's 11th house Sag, so that was a different energy. It was a little bit lighter for Venus Sag. I was searching for truth, but all of that Scorpio energy in the 9th house, basically, I guess what I'm recapping is experiencing that scorpionic depth to get to who you authentically are.
Yes, indeed.
Would you say you can? That has been the case for you too, Michael?
Oh, totally. That's it. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You have that in Sagittarius, right? Yeah, but mine's in the 9th house. So there's something kind of.
Yeah, there is a similarity there. You know, the again, I'm seeing the scorpionic experiences to get to your own truth, and perhaps sometimes just going to that taboo edge. I mean, I was so wounded over my ex leaving me and so codependent at that point in my life that I was nowhere looking for any relationship. I feel that these were very karmic relationships that just popped in so hypnotically. And to complicate it even more, out of those 4 sexual relationships, 3 married men, 2 of the married men were my bosses. So then feeling like, whoa, what did I get myself into, and how do I get out of this?
Yeah, sure.
And one of the bosses was killed in a plane accident. Right about that time, I had that first reading with Jeffrey, and the second boss was evolved enough that I could really just say, hey, listen, this is what I think's going on here, and I'm in too much pain and wounding to even consider something like this. And I was actually able to continue working for that person for another 4 more years, and eventually sold the business, ended up with new people, and I was able to move into at least what would I say, acquaintance phase, I guess I would say. You know, remained communicating with each other off and on over the years. But that can be that 8th house Pluto, but that's that Scorpio energy.
Yeah.
You know, and this is to be doing some summarizing. This is all this Venus Scorpio North Node stuff we have going on right now. You know, everybody can be finding all kinds of different scenarios rising to the surface, testing power, testing powerlessness, testing your separating versus returning desires, bringing up the situations that help you find who am I, who's the real me. And of course, when you look at that Venus, Saturn, Scorpio there, you know, Venus, Saturn, and Scorpio, there's this need to really find your own inner self-empowerment versus trying to live it vicariously through the other person.
Exactly.
And then you can move into, again, that transference of karma mate to soul mate, which is the Michael I know. I had no idea you had all this history, Michael.
Surprise. Yeah.
Most people don't know I have all my history.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think that is the way it is. I told we as teachers in the Waldorf school, we do different things together. And when we were doing biographies, when I did my biography, somebody said, you need to read a book, and people were entertained by my biography. But one thing.
But we can also say that in the midst of it, there is a lot of that scorpionic insecurity, pain, all of the separating seductions that are just trying to keep you in your confusions.
Exactly.
And it takes an effort, you know, and there's your ninth house, trying to crawl out of it into a deeper, broader truth of yourself. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
Just something that I didn't bring up, just the inner and outer nature of Venus in relation to Taurus and Libra. It has to do with this, really, it's, you're mentioning it, it's about listening, we really have to listen to ourselves and be true to ourselves. And, so this really develops an impulse in us, this Taurian impulse into when moving forward evolutionary-wise positively, it becomes faithfulness. We're truly faithful to our authentic selves and ultimately to be faithful to our ideals and what we consider and what we experience as our spiritual self. And then the other listening is listening to others. That's what really the relationship's about, because prior, before learning the lesson, I'd say that I wasn't so much listening to the others. I mean, I was kind of like a listening person, out to superficially to some degree, but I would say, it's more, acting out of my own compulsions, out of my own instinct, sureness, yeah. Not truly listening to another person.
Correct. Let me check in with everybody because it looks like I'm stable on the call, and I can mute and unmute, I think. Do we have comments or questions from anybody in the audience? And you can either raise your hand or type something into the questions, and I'll be able to see it if anybody has questions or anything. All right.
Okay.
Well, I apologize for being in and out, and so one more chance if anybody has questions or comments. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording. I still got a few more things to say, but I'll stop the recording. So here I see something on here. Thank you both for being so brave to share this deep stuff. Well, welcome to the week of Scorpio.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, deep stuff. I can talk about it now. I didn't talk about it for many, many years. Asking those famous Scorpio why questions. Why is this happening to me? I thought I was going to be married for 30 years and be a farm wife.
Yeah, I don't know how many years of therapies and all kinds of things I've done to try to get through all this. But, I feel like I'm on the upside.
Good, and congratulations on selling the house exactly on the Venus-Saturn conjunction.
I know, pretty amazing.
Yeah, anybody else? If not, I'm going to stop the recording here, and I know the second part of the recording turned out okay. I don't know how good the first part of the recording is. Michael, I may ask you to redo it at some point if we don't find that the recording is very well. Believe it or not, I was able to finagle back on this session with my Verizon Jetpack and my phone line, my business phone. Leroy has spent the afternoon going back and forth with the cable company because we upgraded our modem and our router. We had them rewire everything, and all the rewiring came. We're a combination of wired and wireless in the house. Leroy, with his big Mac, has always been directly wired in to the cables. So last weekend, I don't remember what it was, but we had the cable company out, and he says, nobody's wired all your stuff for a while. I'll just redo it for you. And so they just redid all of the cables inside the house. You get a teenager and your TVs and two businesses out of your basement. Well, everything got rewired, and so we did fine these first 2 days, and now with this new modem, with all this new wiring, and our home line running through cable, so we're going back and forth with this cable company who is now making excuses with us, and we're saying, wait a minute, you know, you guys need to still check some things out. So my whole point is, not going in any further, is stay tuned to your email boxes, all right? Stay tuned to your emails, because if we don't feel that we could do a good quality tomorrow morning, we'll either skip the morning session or in other words, we're going to figure this out with the cable company to make sure that we're addressing this technical end as best as we can, because we're a little stumped how we could go just fine for the first 2 days, and then the last one yesterday was when it kind of froze up on us again. So stay tuned. Here's what happens when you're early adopters. But I do like this medium. I remember 8 years ago or so when I first started just doing audio conference calls and going through the same stuff. So we'll move through it. We'll continue on, and if we run out of any if any sessions get interrupted like this, we'll see if we can get speakers to redo them so that we definitely can get recordings that are good quality for everybody after the event. All right, so any questions from anybody on any of that stuff? Otherwise, just again, pay attention to your email inbox. We'll let you know how we're going with this lecture by lecture. And then, Michael, thank you so very much for being willing to open up and share with us on a very personal level. Venus, Saturn, and Scorpio doesn't always want to do that.
It was a great opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you again, and thank you everybody for coming along with us as we explore the technical side of everything through the Grand Cross and all this information. So stay tuned. We hope to be with you tomorrow morning. We'll let you know, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Kim. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Adios.
Adios.